Good to see you again on our channel. Reba McEntire remains still as she sits. As she stepped out of the limelight, her glittering gown lingered like a ghost. For a long time, she was the object of Southern adoration and the unbreakable pearl of the industry. However, something changes tonight. Tonight, she takes the mask off. Under the cover of darkness, she murmurs names tonight. Furthermore, a long-suppressed hurt weighs on every name. Starting with Kenny Rogers has it all. Everyone saw him as a dapper showman with silver hair, the kind of guy whose grin could captivate a whole stadium. Behind the velvet drape, though, he was the start of Reba's harsh betrayal education. When they first started touring together, Kenny would often brush off her suggestions, dismissing her drive and creativity as childish. He insulted her by saying she was just another girl with big hair and implied she wasn't even a partner. There was more to come from her than just being a warm-up act. In order to subdue the audience, he would stealthily switch up the set lists, inserting his soft ballads immediately following her energetic performances. It was a sophisticated act of sabotage. They were a mythical, golden couple to the fans. However, Reba experienced each time she was in the spotlight beside Kenny Rogers as if it were a battle, waged not with physical force, but with subtle manipulations of authority and contempt. Not all legends are fair, she discovered in that silent struggle. Linda Davis, the other half of the duet, then entered and ruined more than simply the harmony. In addition to her unwavering support, Reba provided Linda with opportunities to shine, recognizing her hard work and dedication. But the mentoring relationship quickly turned bad. Linda imitated Reba down to the stage gestures and even the way she delivered her emotions. After Reba mistook Linda's words for compliments, she eventually realized that Linda had been making fun of her fragility behind closed doors. When Linda played a near-identical rendition of one of Reba's classic ballads at the same location where Reba had made it famous, it was the last straw. Erasure, not imitation, was the word. Despite her best efforts, Reba couldn't help but feel a little vulnerable. Remorse replaced trust, and sisterhood became a state of quiet. The scars persisted even as the red carpet and smiles faded. The name Ronnie Dunn evokes a terrible aftertaste, both overt and covert. Brooks and Dunn were the rumbling thunder at the peak of 19's country, abounding with audacity, unstoppable, and widely acclaimed. Their co-headlining tour was something Reba, who is famous for her accuracy and power, was hoping for, but didn't anticipate any explosions behind the scenes. Ronnie Dunn's actions, however, shattered the illusion from the very beginning. He was chronically tardy to rehearsals, walked slouched by stagehands without saying thanks, and ignored Reba's repeated attempts at coordination. Alice traveled almost 670 miles from Oklahoma just to be there for my grand opening premiere. I've spent my entire life visiting there with my family. He was arrogant and self-centered, refusing to work with her and even rolling his eyes when she brought up the topic of show organization. His remarks, which some may find casual, sliced into her like razors. Overly stiff, overly theatrical, and overly dismissive. She posed for photos, signed autographs, and sang her heart out to adoring fans. Yet on the inside, conflict was raging. His haughtiness was more than just annoying, it was erasing. Gradually, it ate away at the dignity she had battled for. The illusion hurt the most. No one saw Ronnie's icy demeanor, eye rolls, or whispers that made her crew uncomfortable, but the fans cheered them on as if they were allies. Reba handled everything professionally, but the emotional wounds she suffered from never healed. When you're supposed to sing a duet with someone who's subtly trying to bring you down, your true performance isn't what everyone notices. However, Travis Tritz's mark is one of the deepest scars. Once upon a time, Reba recognized raw, gritty talent in Travis, the kind that could rock the country music industry in the best possible manner. From the beginning, she thought they were soulmates, free-spirited, genuine, and unabashedly themselves. Therefore, she was under the impression that it would be a thrilling experience to perform with him on a television awards program. Contrary to appearances, chaos reigned behind the scenes. Arriving at rehearsals, Travis exuded an aura of authority. In brainstorming sessions, he would interrupt her in the middle of a sentence, ignore her suggestions, and act as if the spotlight were solely on him. The crew took note. Producers felt the same way. Yet nobody had the guts to stand up to him. Travis refused to budge when Reba raised concerns about the speed and choreography. He was completely uninterested and uncaring. He became angry and said, "Don't do it," as if she weren't valuable. That instant was more devastating than any critical evaluation. The focus wasn't solely on creative vision. An issue of respect arose. For Reba, that boundary had been breached both in private and in public. Despite her boiling wrath, she stepped onto that stage and gave the performance of her life, smiling artificially and clutching her teeth. Situated slightly below the rhinestones, Reba took a firm stance after that night. She had no interest in performing on stage with him ever again. It wasn't that she was afraid of conflict. It was that she would not bow to the arrogance of others. Bruises like those don't go away quickly. It leaves an indelible mark on history, on the decisions that come after it, and on memory itself. The source of the subsequent strike was unexpected. Toby. Reba first respected his audacity, volume, and lack of remorse. His presence was honest and genuine, taking her back to her formative years in country music, when determination was more important than showmanship. However, that admiration was shattered the night he made her his cruel punchline. When Toby made a joke at an exclusive business banquet attended by executives and journalists, it wasn't a casual jest. Regarding Reba's political views, he went on a derisive rant, transforming her beliefs into a show. No one in the room laughed, but Reba. Embedded in her composed grin was a tempest of shame. As her heart raced with betrayal, she stood there and clapped courteously. A few days later, he dropped a song that her supporters immediately associated with her, a snide, barely disguised critique of her principles. This was more than parody. It hit close to home. None of it seemed like a coincidence. Not the timing, not the tone, not the words. A strike from someone who ought to have known better crushed Reba, who had grown accustomed to strangers criticizing her. He shrugged it off when she subtly approached him. Simply entertainment, he claimed, as if her suffering were an act. Everything changed at that moment. His intentional and unrepentant brutality was the problem, not his brazenness. She could manage bold. Reba emerged from that chapter not resentful, but aloof. Gar Brooks inflicted a subtler, although no less agonizing, damage by making it more apparent who her true allies were and who would rather deliver comedy than devotion. None of them were merely co-workers. In a world where everything was changing so fast, they were both symbols of the same revolution. For a long time, Reba had been on Garth's side, supporting his career changes and praising his accomplishments, protecting him from rumors that he sacrificed tradition for fame. In him, she had faith. She thought they were loyal to each other. Therefore, it wasn't merely a business suggestion when she sought him out for her highly anticipated comeback album, Heart on Her Sleeve, requesting his singing talents. The request had its origins in a shared past, a bond of friendship, and a shared heritage. On the other hand, Garth turned down. Understood, no qualms. A courteous exit. The true treachery was something Reba was unprepared for. Shortly after, he collaborated with a younger, more promising artist on a song that was almost identical. The result was a duet that went viral and had chemistry and quiet in the music video. Garth refrained from mentioning or providing an explanation. Rejection wasn't the only thing. Erase was the term. Reba felt more than just a professional sting. On a personal level, she had extended her hand in a vulnerable gesture, and he had responded with vacant stillness and apathy. More so than any chorus and more pointed than any lyrics, it spoke volumes. As for the admirers, unaware of her request or how it broke her heart, they reveled in his new single. Simply said, the anguish of having been disregarded by the person you stood next to does not go away just because the cheers stop. Last but not least, the one that hit close to home, Gill. Forget about being a mere co-performer. Previously, Reba had seen him as a genuine friend. They appeared to have an unbreakable mutual regard, having shared late-night laughter on tour buses and had quiet discussions before curtain calls. The turning point came when Reba's world started to fall apart. When she was going through a terrible patch, her father's death and the media's obsession with the resulting mayhem, Vince disappeared. He failed to be there for her when she needed a friend the most, not with songs, but with just his presence. As if sent as a formality by an unknown sender, there was no reassuring phone call, no personal visit, no shoulder to cry on. Vince remained distant, avoiding any public appearances with her as the tabloids dragged her name through the muck. He was afraid for his pristine reputation if he stood by someone going through a tough time. Presence in silence, rather than acclaim, is the true measure of friendship, according to Reba. Vince was absent at the crucial moment, and that emptiness resounded more acutely and with a louder echo than any slight or betrayal. When someone who was there for you before decides to disappear exactly when you need them the most, it hurts more than just emotionally. It alters your trustworthiness indefinitely. These feuds were far from trivial. Similar to earthquakes, unpredictable, painful, and long-lasting. These profound emotional fault lines shattered Reba's career. Behind every note she sung was a scar from a past struggle, unseen by fans but still affecting her deeply. She kept her cool, grew stronger, and gracefully weathered each betrayal, but she never forgot. Her quiet allowed the anguish to fester. An iconic country singer, Reba McEntire, is more than that. She is the culmination of all the challenges she overcame while down. With trembling hands, she received each accolade. In front of the cameras, she wore her grin like armor, shielding them from the sight of her tears. She was shaped by the industry to be delicate, subdued, and diminutive. However, Reba declined. Her voice erupted into raging indignation at every instance of cold shoulder, backhanded compliment, or betrayal. It wasn't out of vengeance that she finally spoke their names out loud. It was in the name of freedom and truth. In honor of the shy, quiet child who lived inside her and who formerly preferred to remain silent. Not with resentment, but with a dignity-infused rallying cry, she reclaims that quiet today. Queens of the country don't fall, they stand tall. They last. The scars will be more dazzling than rhinestones, and they will stand taller than before when the dust settles.